Welcome back, Nightmare Success and Out listeners, where you guys come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? I love these stories, but I got to tell you, the other day I was talking to my guest, Father, known as Father Joe, Father Joseph Ciconne, and it's a fascinating story because before we got started here, we were talking about why are people drawn in to these type of stories. I think it's because we all have times when we hit our peak and then we fall down, and that is when you really find your true self. Like, how do you get up and how do you get to the next step? And Father Joe, he had an incredible peak. He spent his life as a police officer. He got elected as sheriff of the largest county in New Jersey, Bergen County. And when I say it's big, it was over 500 officers and a $41 million budget and a lot going on. And in his world, as it was moving along, it ended up where he had, it all came down to campaign contributions and trying to untangle that and investigations and whatever that all comes into play. And he picked himself up after this big story. I mean, it was covered in the New York Times and other places. And when those things happen, there's nowhere to hide. And when I'm referencing him as Father Joe, he became a Catholic priest after all this took place. And he's doing things now to fill up himself and other people in his own lives by being able to use his story to help others through their struggles and where they are in life. I can't wait to unpack all this. This is I've never had someone who's had the struggles and has become a Catholic priest. So this story, it fascinates me, and we had a great conversation last week, and I've been excited to do this interview. Before we unpack all that, I want to make sure that I recognize our sponsor of the show, Auto Plaza Direct. Who likes spending a couple of weekends walking a lot looking for a car? Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a trip to the dentist. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. You just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price and deliver that car to you. They also offer you warranties and financing, so it's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Okay, Father Joe, welcome. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful, Brent. Thank you for having me here. Thank you to your audience who tunes in. It's just great to be here. It's great to be able to share a story that isn't unique to me alone, or to you, or to some of your listeners, I'm sure. But before we begin, I just want to do a bit of clarification. Even though I am a Catholic priest, we are old Catholic. And just for your audience, Catholicism has 3 components: Roman Catholic, and even though I grew up Roman Catholic, I went to Catholic school. Old Catholic, which is where the schism took place, and there's one Pope in Lyon and one in Rome. And then Orthodoxy, which is Roman and Greek, etc. So I am part of the middle. I am an old Catholic priest, although we call ourselves progressive. And actually, we call our church, really, just like you refer to your listeners, as the Church of Second Chances. That those people who have fallen down, those people who have made a mistake, are always welcome. And one of the other things that we do, very different from Rome, is because of that idea of second chances, we have an open table. So anyone is welcome to communion. What we tell people is, we're a progressive Catholic church. At this table, this body of Christ is not a reward for being a good Catholic or a good Christian. This is food for your journey. So anyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome.
And so I always thought that was interesting, Father Joe, because I went to DeSmith, that was a Catholic school, and because I was not Catholic, I couldn't take communion. But I was thinking, I did know the Bible, and I know that when Jesus gathered his disciples around the table, I don't think he ever said, take this, all you Catholics. So it was always fascinating.
That's the whole point to this. He did not. And, ironically, the group that's most affected by this are women. And that breaks my heart. Women who have had gone through a divorce or sadly may have had to give up a child through abortion are completely restricted. And we do not believe in that at all. Jesus would never say to no to someone, especially those who are in pain and suffering and who need comfort and love. So that's what this role is all about now.
I love it. I love it. And the other thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to Jeff Grant, because he runs the Progressive Prison Ministries, and he was nice enough to connect me with you. And Jeff does incredible work. He was a guest on this show, and he also has an incredible story, and is doing really good work in connecting a lot of people to in this genre that we're in, this arena that we're in, trying to get the word out that second chances are possible. And Jeff's a good man. So, Father Joe, I want to take us back a little bit, because to understand your story, I think we have to go back to your, when you were growing up as a kid, and your parents and your dad and your mom. What was life like for you?
I grew up in a middle-class suburb of New York City, right a mile away from the George Washington Bridge. My dad was on a second career at that point. At 27 years old, he got married to my mom. They both had met in junior high school. Dad was the captain of the basketball team. My mom, Catherine, or Kitty as everyone called her, was the head cheerleader. They were a rock and roll Italian couple. And at 27 years old, Dad gave up being a painter and became a policeman. And 2 years later, I am the first of three that were born by Kitty and Joe. And apparently I was a bit of a handful, they said. So at 4 years old, when my baby sister was born, they shipped me off to Catholic school, Sacred Heart Polish Catholic Roman Catholic School in North Bergen, New Jersey. And actually there I truly fell in love with God. And that's where this journey landed me. But at 4 years old, I put on the Catholic school uniform. At 19 years old, when I took that Catholic school uniform off, I followed in my dad's footsteps and I put on a police uniform. And I spent the next 20 years wearing that uniform with great pride and great resilience. Dad was a really great provider, but he was very, very tough. He was a former United States Marine. And so it was a very strict household. And
how was that for you, though, Father Joe, with a dad who's in the police force, in a strict environment? I'm sure it was strict. How did you work through that as a teenager and growing into that world?
That is such a great question. And of course, it's a very personal question. And I was slightly rebellious. And even though I was a goody two-shoes Catholic schoolboy, I had challenges with that. So I would buck Dad as much as I could. And ironically, I become a cop, not to be like Dad. And I vividly recall as a teenager saying, I'm going to be a cop to show you how to do it the right way, to be kind and to be gentle and to help people. And the irony is, he guided me through that whole career. My first 3 years, I worked under his command in a small town, Cliffside Park, New Jersey. And then
what was that like? I mean, it's almost like I'm thinking, Father Joe, that might be like, your dad's the coach of your basketball or your football team. What did you feel like, that you were just one of the guys, or did you feel like, that's Dad? I'm either getting a better deal or I'm getting a harder deal?
Dad was very clear about, if you want to do this, it's not going to be easy and you're going to get no favoritism. I got yelled at, Brent, every single day, no matter what I did. And it would be in front of the other cops. Sure. I'd get screamed and yelled at. But it only made me want to work harder at being better at this job. And then I took civil service test in the next town, Fairview. I did very well on that test. I came out number one. and I spent most of my career there until near the end, where because of politics, well, actually, I'll add this story because it's important.
Yeah.
He was a great cop, strong, loyal, and he was a captain, and he was up to be promoted to the chief of police. And he didn't get it. He got skipped over by someone who was really on the same level, but wasn't doing the work my dad was doing. So dad left, and he left not happy. And the mayor of that town was also the Bergen County Democratic chairman. So he was a very, very powerful man. So dad leaves, not happy, and he even gets sick over it. He winds up getting colon cancer just because of the stress and the horror. But he recovers. He goes 8 years cancer-free. Everything is actually going well. But a few years pass, and then that Democratic chairman of Bergen County pulls me at the Fairview Police Department. I'm at that time an acting lieutenant, running the detective bureau, running the DARE program, teaching kids. I'm an elected official. I'm on the Board of Education in Fairview, and I'm a full-time college professor at the same time at Berkeley College in New Jersey, teaching criminal justice and sociology. Life could not have been better.
Right.
Your show, Nightmare to Success, I started off with great success. It was one wonderful event after the next. And the chairman calls and says, "Can you come to my office?" And I do. And he said, Governor of New Jersey, was Christy Whitman, just appointed the Bergen County Sheriff, Jack Cahoon, to take over the Department of Corrections in New Jersey. We are going to have a special election for that. And a Democrat has not won in Bergen County in 25 years. You're probably not going to win. It would be a miracle if you won, but it'll be great name recognition. And maybe next year, if you want to run for assembly or get involved, it would be it'd be great. So I thanked him. I was kind. I said, "Thank you, Mayor, but have to think about this. Can I get back to you on Monday?" It was a Friday. I'm working day shift. I get back to my office and I call my dad. He was in Florida. And he said, "Get on a plane, come down here so we could talk." I said, "I'm working." "Yes, you can. Get on a plane, use a credit card." Okay. I got on a plane and I flew to Florida, and we have a conversation. Dad never would do anything on the phone. He was always very cognizant of what could happen and making a mistake. And I do the scenario, and I tell him that I don't think this is a good idea because of my personal life. And Brent, I don't know if you know this part of my narrative or the story, but literally, probably as a teenager, I recognized that I was slightly different from other people. And for your audience, even though I am a priest for 10 years, a cop for 20 years, I taught college in the middle of that, professor for 20 years, I am also a gay man. And to have that conversation with the Marine Corps police captain dad was really tough. And dad said, "That's not going to come out. You're going to be absolutely fine. Don't worry about it." And I always, ironically, believed my dad. So I went back, met with the mayor again. I said, "Okay, we're going to do this." Dad flies back from Florida and leads the campaign. And he really wanted this for you. Unbelievable. And I've seen him work hard my whole life, but never like this. He was out from morning till night, 8 months on the campaign trail. We went everywhere. Bergen County has 71 towns. We visited every one of them 3 or 4 times over. And ironically, that fateful night, a miracle from God happens. The night before, I'm at St. John's Baptist Church. I'm kneeling. It was early in the morning. There was no mass. God, I really want this. I want to show the world that me as a gay person can do this. That I could change things. And I win. I win. Bergen County has 1 million voters. It was shocking, especially to my dad.
And how old would you have been, Father Joe, at that time?
I was the youngest elected sheriff in the state. I was 39 years old.
Wow.
You know, it's hanging on my wall. And I want to vomit every time I look at it. God forgive me. But literally, the next day, the Daily News, there's a new sheriff.
New sheriff in town.
Everything was changing. It was completely amazing. And as this new, very excited, very young and experienced sheriff, I started making radical change. Bergen County, one of the wealthiest counties in the country, had one of the largest jails as well. Most of the people in Bergen County jail were either Latino or African American, and we had 96% white males in charge of that jail. There were very few African Americans, very few Latinos, and very few women. So my whole tenure there was to focus on minority issues. The first appointment was an African American undersheriff, second in command, Gordon Johnson. Gordon Johnson remained there after I left. He was a New Jersey assemblyman for a number of years, and he just got elected last year to the New Jersey Senate. So one of my gifts to New Jersey that's filling growing. I did something that was radical. It's been done after, but not before. I called civil service and I said, I have no people who speak Spanish in this agency. I need that. I had the first ever, and you didn't have to do a separate test. All they did was a computer-generated list of bilingual officers. I had my first class of all Latinos. It was huge. And then the third thing I did, I called civil service. I said, I want to do the same thing for women. Can we do that? Yep, you don't need a test. All we have to do is, you have a need for women, we will get women. And so a full class of just female officers. That has never been done in the entire country. So
that's pretty radical too at that time.
It was great. It was radical for now because we still.
It's radical now, right? Exactly.
But long story short, after I get elected and I'm making all these radical changes, I am upsetting the
establishment. Yep.
Oh my gosh, it got rough.
Yep.
But my dad, who said I will always be protected, everything will be great. Literally 90 days after I swore to uphold that Constitution, Dad dies. Massive heart attack.
But he got to see you elected.
And that worked him. Great gift from God.
Yep.
Gift from God. But then after he left, it got worse and worse and worse.
So let's talk about, because I've read all kinds of different things, and you never know what you have is real or not real when you read stuff. But you were a guy on the move, and you were shaking up the establishment. When did things get to where you thought something was happening that could damage you?
Probably a year in.
Okay.
And I actually did. I was young and inexperienced. I make a few mistakes. Most of them I perceive were not illegal. It was probably bad judgments. I did a survey of all my employees. I had 500 officers, but I had 200 civilians. Aside from the clerical people, we had drug counselors and doctors working for us. We ran a jail. We ran the county. We ran BCI. I had scientists in the lab. So we had a substantial workforce. So, but I did a survey of all employees, especially the officers. 95% of them did not have a college degree to do that job. Bergen County is one of the highest paid law enforcement agencies in the state. Normally today, a corrections officer could make anywhere from $125,000 to $150,000. And that's not including the best medical and pension package that's available worldwide. It's substantially. And I'm not saying that you have to have a college degree to do this job and to make a difference in the world. But I do believe it creates certain character or ability or understanding of what's important. Of course, the irony is me with my college degree and 3 graduate degrees.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're very well educated.
But I'm the one who took a fall, but it's okay. But one of the people that worked with my dad, side by side, was at the time my domestic partner, or civil union, and now marriage. We've been together 27 years.
It's a long time.
He had a graduate degree in HR, and our staff was lacking. So I hired someone that was very, very close to me. It's nepotism, but nepotism isn't a crime. It's just sometimes, many times, a bad call. Although, right next to that new sheriff in town is the picture of John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy. They're my heroes, about how people that you trust and that you love sometimes work even harder for you.
Well, and at that point, JFK, he put his brother as Attorney General because Joe Kennedy said you got to have somebody you can trust. And that was, I think at the time, and I might be wrong about that, I think Robert Kennedy was only like 32 years old at the time that he took the Attorney General spot.
The youngest Attorney General in the world. And for your viewers, that's the photo that's next to my desk.
I love that.
It's one that inspired me over and over again. So I hired my partner, and he's excellent. And was doing radical work. But then 3 months after that, it's the first time I make the news in a radical way. And it's not just the New York Times and the Daily News, and of course the local New Jersey news. I would make Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7 in the metro area. So the news clip was Bergen County Sheriff hires gay lover. And I'm mortified. And of course, my husband at the time, younger than I, his parents and grandparents did not know that he was actually gay himself. So they all see it on the channel.
That's how they learn about it.
Yeah. So it broke my heart. So that was the beginning of the end. And then I became a little bit more introspective, a little bit less aggressive in trying to make a difference and just trying to do the job, except that nightmare just got worse and worse and worse. So
one of the things that they talked about was that the people that worked for you making campaign contributions, can they not, is that something that you can't do? If someone wants to make a campaign contribution for someone that they work for, is that a subjective thing, or is that actually a law that is a statute that says that if you work in the department of?
That's a great question. And for your viewers, on January 11th, 2001, just months before 9/11, the Twin Towers fell, I took a plea agreement. And I'm going to tell you that story if you want to hear it.
Sure.
For one crime, and New Jersey law, statutory law, is substantial. This is a law that's called the old 2A. It was old common law. And the law is demand of campaign contributions from government employees, especially the police. So, yes, you can fundraise. However, you're not supposed to, of course, you should never just morally pressure your own people to attend. And, that is the crime that I pleaded guilty to. And I never sold one ticket as the sheriff. I had a huge staff. I had a huge campaign re-election staff. Did they apply some pressure on some of the people? Probably. And I was the boss. I should have been more aware and I should have been more clear, but no one ever complained to me. They would buy those tickets hoping to get promoted, hoping to get another better assignment, hoping to get a transfer. But that's the crime that I pled guilty to. But and I would not have, only because I didn't do it myself, and nor did I think it was overly aggressive. I think it's common practice. Every sheriff in the world does it, and it's done through every government official does it in the world. It is common practice, but there is an old common law statute in New Jersey. But the reason why I did that, I pled guilty and walked away, was very real. And it's actually the heart of the nightmare. It's one that picks me up still 22 years later. After my dad died, Dad was the campaign treasurer. And I was shocked, like, oh my God, he was 64 years old, should not have been dead. So one of the campaign leaders said, your dad is the campaign treasurer. He's the one who actually signs checks. Why don't you just see if your mom wants to do it, and that'll be an easy transition. Mom said, sure, whatever you need, I'll be glad to help. And literally all she did was have to attend a quarterly meeting. She was not responsible to even review the books. We literally had 3 accountants on staff to do that, sign bigger checks. Otherwise, the secretary that we had for the campaign could sign checks. So literally a week before I resign and walk away from a job, but I can't stress this more strongly. I loved being a cop. I loved being a priest, but there was nothing like being a cop, and in my mind, maybe doing it the right way, being a little bit more gentle and kind and innovative. But in the midst of the end, 2 of my very strong, loyal officers, both who aren't really supposed to be police officers. One was a local garbage man that I worked with in Fairview, and the other was one of my college students. I was teaching at Monmouth University. He was a bright student. Both helped during the campaign. Not overly, but they were there. They were really doing the right thing. And I liked them both. They were 2 great kids. So they're in my office. They come into my office to see me on something, to review a few police-related things. And they said, Sheriff, just so you know, we actually had a meeting last week. We're making sure everything's in order. And we were with the accountant. And it looks like 8 people gave you more money this year for their campaign contributions than they were supposed to. I said, well, how much more? Well, this one gave 500 more, this one gave 1,000. It wasn't a substantial amount of money. And they said, what do we do? I said, that is called an elect violation, when we take more money than we're supposed to. And the norm is that you give it back. But if we get caught, normally you pay a fine. That's the least thing on my mind right now. We got a million other things going on. If we get caught, we pay the fine. I don't want to worry about that. Work it out with the account. They said, okay, and they leave. So literally 2 days, maybe 3 days before I resign and take a plea deal, my lawyer, who's representing me in some of the problems that are leading up to this, calls me to his office, and I sit down, presses a button on a tape recorder, and I hear that conversation that I just relayed to all your listeners. And he said, prosecutor's office said, unless you resign in 48 hours, they'll let you go file for your pension. They're arresting your mother, who's the campaign treasurer. I said, could that happen? They said they will be able to arrest her. They will handcuff her and take her to your jail. We'll get her out in a couple of hours, but she will be processed. I said, that can't happen. That will not happen. What's the other option? They want you to plead guilty to 3 charges. Here they are. I cross one right off the list. I don't even recall what it is, but I take the plea deal for demand of campaign contributions from public employees. And then what's attached to that is official misconduct, that I allowed that to happen as a public official. I didn't realize that that was a big deal. It's a big deal because once you do official misconduct as an elected official, it can never be taken away. Everyone else can have a crime expunged or depleted and you never see it again. You could be exonerated. As a public official, and I was a cop for 20 years, but I didn't realize it was a life sentence. So that is a life sentence. And I went to Trenton. I filed for my pension, and 2 days later, they transferred this to Morris County because I was the Bergen County Sheriff. I walked in at 9 o'clock in the morning. I literally did a 5-minute plea deal, and my life, as I knew it, ended.
Changed. So what is, after going through all that, and that it is so common, you telling that story, Father Joe, about if things don't go a certain way, they can always go and attach themselves to family members, and it's, I've got a friend of mine that he was actually in a county jail for 10 months trying to fight his case, and they said, we're going to give you so many hours, and if you don't do your plea, then we're going to charge your wife, we're going to charge your son. He ended up, getting a lot more time than what he would have gotten if he would have pled at the beginning. But that happens so often, and I there's so much under the underbelly of what people don't see when they read about things as it comes out in the paper. But there's so many. That's always why I want to hear the story, because it's one of the things I think it taught me going through what I went through, is that you don't ever judge a book by its cover, because there's so many people that I met in prison that were good people that had done something in their lives that put them where they were. But the story that they have and how they got there is always so much more interesting than what you read about or what you think you know. So you enter into this new world. You've fallen from a great peak in your life. What's going through your mind as that happens to you?
And I hope I'm not preaching to your audience, because I know many of your listeners have gone through their own trauma, their
Sure.
own challenge.
Everybody does. Yeah.
But I truly think that it was just my faith that started at 4 years old at Sacred Heart Catholic School, that never, ever diminished, even through all this. It was a blessing beyond. And it taught me so many things. First and foremost is that our criminal justice system is failing millions and millions of people. And I was part of that problem for 20 years. I can't tell you how quickly I would arrest someone and put them in jail and think I'm saving the world. I got a marijuana person in jail. Oh my God, thank God that law has changed, because the law is supposed to be fluid and changing, and most of all, it's supposed to be geared to help society grow. Right. I ran a jail. We don't rehabilitate anyone. All we do is punish people. And clearly, it's not working. We have more people incarcerated in the United States than any other industrial country in the world. And I was part of that problem. But going back to miracles and how one moves from that nightmare, after, and I don't mind I'm transparent with who I am and what I am, but I don't want to put my husband in the limelight, because he doesn't belong there. But after he makes the news that first year, he said, I have to leave. I can't, I'm not going to be a part of this, and resigns, leaves the state actually, just to avoid being in the limelight. We have a small condominium in Florida. He goes there, he gets a job, and winds up getting an even better job. He becomes the HR director for Continental Express. He still loves airlines, and
that's great.
So he gets a great job, and we're flying back and forth. So our relationship even grew stronger. But anyway, so 6 months after, and to be honest,
which is good to hear, Father Joe, because a lot of times that's not what happens. The majority of time, there's a big disaster and there's a split, and that didn't happen to you, which is fantastic.
We stayed together. We grew stronger. Although there's another nightmare that happens that I'll share. Ironically, when my dad dies, I had sold my house and I moved in to help my mom. We have a special needs sister. I have. Mom had a special needs daughter. Both my husband and I now care for my beautiful sister, and it's a great gift from God, but one that happened through a nightmare as well. But anyway,
sure.
I resigned. I am sentenced. At my sentencing, I actually speak up. For the first time, my lawyer lets me speak up. And I give this famous speech. This has happened to me because I am a gay man. This would not have happened to any other person. This is common knowledge. My last month in office, I'm driving to work at the courthouse, and I would get there at the crack of dawn. I was so diligent in the work. And there's 4 sheets hanging from the courthouse 4-story parking garage, sewn together, hanging there in black, that read, "Gay Joe must go." As I pull into the Bergen County courthouse, and New Jersey has one of the toughest hate crimes law in the world. And of course, cops are coming and going all night. Nobody takes it down. They let it greet me as I walk in. So I order it taken down. And I also order an attorney general investigation about that.
Sure.
Nothing ever happened. But all of that's done. I resign on the 11th. I speak out at my sentencing about being a gay man. And then literally, I have nothing. I'm starting from scratch again. But a few short months later, and it's so ironic that we're doing this podcast this week, 9/11 happened. And I know me. I know how I worked and what I did. There's no doubt in my mind. I would have been notified as I leave my house at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning to go to the courthouse that a plane would have hit the World Trade Center. I know that I would have put my lights and siren on in my unmarked car and been standing next to the command post with Chief Gansey, with Father Michael Judd. I would have been there when the second plane hit and they all died. So it is a miracle that I relieved myself of command. And if I didn't die that day, I would have surely died of 9/11 related illnesses, because I would have been in that pile with my officers who were there.
Right.
But all of that. So that was nightmare 2 that happens as a result of that, a miracle. Except the irony, my husband is in charge of HR for Continental Airline Express. So 12 days later, he, along with 12,000 other airline employees, are laid off.
Oh, wow.
So both of us,
same time.
no jobs, no health insurance, no money. And all the money that I had saved my entire life, I was so frugal, went to my lawyer. So it was starting from, ironically, ground zero in our own personal lives. But faith is calling. Faith is there. It doesn't diminish. If anything, I'm going to church more, and just loving God and saying to myself every day, something else is going to happen. God wants you to do something more.
So knowing that, and I mean, I didn't realize that happened to both of you at the same time. What did you reach out and do? How did you start taking that step? Because that's that moment. I think you so correctly said ground zero, because you only have 2 choices at that point. You crawl up in a fetal position and get into a corner and give up, which people do, or you just grit yourself out and take a step, not knowing, because it's the unknown, and figure it out. What did you figure out?
I had, when I was the sheriff, 1,000 best friends. I had more people that wanted to be my best friend, all because they wanted something in return.
Sure.
Now I have about 3. So, but aside, one of the friends that I have that was not political or not law enforcement was a man named Jerry Conley. He owned a school bus company in New Jersey, one of the largest private school bus companies. And he actually came to my I didn't invite my mother. I didn't invite any family. My husband wasn't there. It was me. This is my responsibility. So, but Jerry comes, and he was a big, strong Irish Catholic. And it looked like my bodyguard, even though he wasn't. He just escorted me out. And I did not, like so many of your listeners, my plea deal was contingent upon not going to jail, but I had 5 years probation. And as an ex-cop, a former cop, it was actually brutal. My female probation officer made me urinate in front of her every month. It was odd. I'd be sitting in probation, literally with people who would recognize me. You arrested me. I was in your jail.
I can't imagine.
It was surreal. No, it was horrible. But one of my number one thing, I had to be gainfully employed. Otherwise, I violate probation and I could be sentenced to 5 years in jail.
Right.
Jerry said, come to work with me at the bus company. And so I said, thank you. I can't be more thankful for that. But I went from top cop to bus hop. And I went, he made me his school bus safety director, but I was literally on and off school buses, making sure the kids were safe. And I did that for the whole 5 years.
Wow.
And it was wonderful. And it was hard. I'm literally working in a garage, but it was such a lesson in humility and understanding real work, and also doing something that I always loved doing, especially as a cop, helping kids. I was a DAD officer for all those years, so it was great. But right after that, and I thanked God every day. God, what else is there to do? And I know you may think I'm crazy, but whisper is like, I want you to be a priest. I want you to really tell people that I'm real, that I do miracles, that anything can happen. So after the 5 years was done, I went to Dunwoody Roman Catholic Seminary in Yonkers, New York. And I told my husband, and he said, Joe, you can't do that. You're gay. It's against the rules there, remember? I said, no, Bill Clinton, don't ask, don't tell. It'll be okay. And I get through my first year of discernment, and I am loving it. It was a class of 12 people. God forgive me, but the most odd group of men I've ever been exposed to, but I'm thriving. I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's filling you up.
It was great. And then apparently, one of my former subordinates from the sheriff's department goes to the town, Cliffside Park, where my domestic partnership and civil union is, gets those 2 documents and sends them to the Archdiocese of the city of New York. So I am asked to leave.
And how long had you been there?
Full year.
A full year.
Awesome. That was awesome. It was my second year getting ready to start.
Got a knockdown.
And so I'm like, all right, this is not a good thing. God, what does this mean? And as I'm talking to a few of the religious friends that I had since made there, they said there's another seminary in New York City called Union Theological Seminary. It is the oldest ecumenical seminary in the country. It's where Bonhoeffer studied, and great minds. It is adjacent to Riverside Cathedral in the city of New York. I had not heard of it. I went, I visited, I fell in love with it. It is beautiful. So I fill out the application, and in the application, my narrative story, I share. I share what happens at the sheriff's department. I share my gay identity. I share what happens at the Catholic seminary. And then I receive, God bless them, a full scholarship to Union Theological Seminary.
Wow.
And then I move in, and I spent 3 years there, and it was the best time of my life.
And I think there's something to be said for what you just said there, Father Joe, is that you were very open and honest about your situation and what it was, how you got there, how you were affected by how you experienced it. And I think that's one of the things that people who have experienced, especially through have experienced criminal justice in some way, of how they tell their story, how they relate that to others, to be able for people to understand how they got to where they are. I think that opens up opportunities, and it's there's, I guess in some ways there's a little bit of a similarity in the people that I talk to, actually coming out and saying that you're gay is, I've talked to so many people. My brother's gay, so I've experienced that as a brother, and my parents, and I couldn't be more proud of him. He's an incredible guy, has done incredible things. But I think it gives you kind of a new rebirth when you do that, and you are able to relate who you are. And I also think that people who experience their nightmare, whether they're been sentenced to prison or been convicted or whatever that is, being able to share that, not hide that, I think is also freeing of the mind, that you're not hiding something that they're going to use that against you. They're going to find out if you stand out in front of it and you become it's in your own skin, it's who you are, then I think you can progress through life better, because you're not feeling like you're shaming yourself, hiding something back. You're actually bringing yourself forward. This is who I am. This is what I am, and how it's affected me as a person, how I want to affect things and be impactful. So I think that's an interesting twist on how you went through what you went through. You went through a year of really loving where you were, and you got knocked out. You got knocked down again, but you didn't stop. You found another opportunity, and that was the right fit.
First of all, thank you for sharing the story of your brother. I'll be more impressed with that. I'm so impressed with you and your commitment to doing what you're doing, but now to add that layer is so important. This idea of shame and stigma that those of us impacted by the criminal justice have is substantial. It's real. But
Sure.
Also, I had that training. And, I'm saying as a teenager, I knew at 5 years old, I knew sitting in that pew at Sacred Heart that I was different. It didn't manifest till years later. And just to, be clear, when I take my first civil service test in 1980, it's question number 3 on a state application. Are you a homosexual? And if you wrote yes, you're disqualified. You were not allowed to be a cop.
I did not know that.
If you lie on a police application, it's a crime. And I did lie because at that time, at 19 and 20 years old, I wasn't an active gay man. I was scared to death.
Sure.
And then I become a cop, and then the AIDS epidemic hit, and then the anti-homophobia that was rampant, that has never really dissipated. I lived a whole life as shame and stigma. Yeah. Now to be enhanced as a felon is criminal. Can I share one more story on?
Absolutely.
Old, not this January, but the January prior, a dear friend that I meet after I graduate from seminary at Union Theological. I go next door and spend 7 years at the Jewish Theological Seminary for my CPE training to be a chaplain. And I become friends with so many wonderful and amazing rabbis. One rabbi, Leanna, is now the head rabbi at New Jersey's oldest synagogue in Jersey City. We're dear friends. So a month before the New Jersey governor, Phil Murphy, is to go through his inaugural event, he gets reelected by a thin margin. Apparently, and I don't know this firsthand, I'm getting it from sources, the Archdiocese of Newark contacts the governor's office and says, unless you relinquish or change your stance on women's reproductive rights, you are not welcome. Your prayer service for the inauguration cannot be held at the cathedral, nor will any Roman Catholic priest be there to bless you. Wow. So the governor's office, in a brilliant move, contacts the oldest Jewish organization in Jersey, my friend, Rabbi Leanna, who says, I have a progressive Catholic priest, if you're interested, that I'm sure would be glad. Governor's office calls me, interviews me, and I said, I'd be delighted to fill in for the cardinal. And I am on the top of the list in front of every religious denomination, blessing the governor, Governor Phil Murphy, his wife and children, for his inauguration. And in addition to the prayer, I offer my own brief story. That as a gay man, and also whose husband, and I'm being careful with his name, is now a public school teacher in one of New Jersey's most challenged inner cities for the past 24 years now. Wow. Right after 9/11, went to teaching. And I gave this whole narrative thanking the governor for his stance on equal rights, diversity, women's rights. And I do a really decent job. And God forgive me for the humility there. But the governor and first lady sent not only personal thank you notes, hug me, even though we're wearing masks, but they invite my husband and I, literally 6 months later, to the inaugural ball at MetLife Stadium. My husband gets to meet the governor. I get invited to the governor's mansion 2 other times for prayer meetings, for recognizing Holocaust remembrance. The governor's office is calling me literally for every event that they want my presence at. The governor, every time he sees me, my favorite priest, Father Joe, is here. And then I become slightly bold and embracing my request. The only way to eliminate the stigma that I have carried around, and millions carry around, it can't be done through any other way except a pardon. My request for pardon has been on the governor's desk for 17 years. Every governor, including my dear friend, Governor McGreevey, who stole my speech about being a gay American, but no one has signed it. So I sent a little email to the governor reminding him that was there.
Yeah.
And since that, the governor's office has cut me off, hasn't called me since. You shouldn't be laughing at this. You're supposed to be someone with compassion and love.
Oh, that's just so
I
incredible.
laugh at it too. It's just, but that's how the system works. And it's sad. But people like you are changing it. You're getting the voice out there that change is necessary, especially in the criminal justice system.
And I think that my only frustration, and there was Jeff Grant had someone on last night who was making a lot of impact. His name's Glenn Martin. The only frustration I find, because I love doing this, I love sitting in this chair and hearing these stories, and I get re-inspired all over again. The thing that I think, and I'm not even sure how it happens, is there's so many people like yourself and Jeff Grant and Harley Blakeman. I could name off so many different people that are making big changes. It's the connection of connecting all those voices to become a bigger voice. And I'm not sure how that happens, but there's so many good people that are taking their opportunity and making their second chance work. And they're, because of their experience, have become very impactful with, their voice around the table. And I know that there's a way, because there's 25 million, ex-felons out there in the world and in the United States. And if we could, in some way, connect all those dots of all those states of people that are doing good things, I think our voice could be so much more powerful. But, there's always a way. There's always a way. But I love what you're doing. And I think, and the opportunities of people who come into your path, knowing your story, I think that is so impactful for the person looking for help, that they're not intimidated. They're not, or less intimidated, I guess I should say, because they know your story and you're there to help them. And I think that's an intangible thing that you have in the world that you're in that can really create a lot of change.
Thank you. Thank you. But I want to give a message to end to those, not only the 25 million who are just as impacted, but to all people who are struggling with anything, because there, by the grace of God, go you or I, and everyone makes mistakes. We've made mistakes that were very public, very powerful, but everyone has challenges. And I really hate to quote this President Ronald Reagan, because anyway, but he said, and I hope I'm allowed to use this word on your podcast, but in that big pile of shit that we may be into, there's got to be a pony in there somewhere. Yeah. For me, that pony was God and faith. Yeah. I really think all of you out there listening, going through really hard times, just believe in something. And it doesn't have to be Jesus or God. Just believe that there is a better tomorrow, that there is something that you're called to do, even if it's sharing your story to help someone else who may be going through something similar or even something worse. I was on Jeff Grant's call on Monday. They meet every Monday, gathering together. And I reminded everyone on Monday, on September 11th, and I told all those people in that room, I know that all of you are struggling and going through this trauma yourself, but we're alive and well and fighting those 3,000 souls who perished that day, as well as all of their families and all those who've died since. They don't have a second chance. We do. So those of you who can use that second chance to make a difference. Brent, you're doing it. I can't thank you enough for having me here. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Joe. And I want to ask you one last question, because I ask everybody this. Because of what you've been through, and your story is one that should be a book. What do you think is your greatest takeaway through all that you've been through, for the listeners out there?
I'm having a challenge with that one because I know what the greatest takeaway is. My greatest takeaway is that the American criminal justice system is failing. It is not making any change. Crime is running rampant. You know, in my 20 years, I would arrest rapists and domestic violence people, and most of them do not get as harsh a punishment as people who commit white-collar crimes. Most of those people don't even go to jail. We have to find some way of changing that. I can't help but think of Martha Stewart. What a waste of tax dollars to send her to Danbury prison. Let her pay an exorbitant fine. Let her do community service. We're not doing this the right way whatsoever. All we're doing is keeping the correctional industry making a lot more money and focusing on punishing people. It's time to focus on forgiveness, understanding, and helping people survive, especially those with mental health issues. And I know I need to speak out more on that. And I'm not doing it because I'm still afraid of the system. The system punishes people who go after them. And I tried to do that as the sheriff and I failed. As a priest, I do it from the pulpit, but you're allowing me to do it to a much larger audience. So thank you for that.
Father Joe, you have been an incredible guest. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you?
Great. stjosephmissionchurch.org, Saint Mission St Joseph Mission Church at gmail.com, or actually they could call us on our telephone, except I don't have it remembered, so I'm pulling out a card, so just give me a minute. But I can't thank you enough for doing that. It is such a, we're doing together is a dream beyond dreams. So hold on, I need my glasses again, and your listeners are going to love this phone number, 201-754-4GOD, G-O-D, for God. So those that need us, reach out. That's our information, and God love you all.
That's great, Father Joe. And for anybody who's out there, please, if you got anything from this today, and I know you did because there's all kinds of nuggets of wisdom that Father Joe's sharing, follow the show. It's easy. Hit the bell on Spotify, hit the follow button on Apple, and share. And if you leave a review, I don't know what it is about the algorithm, but the algorithm loves it when the reviews, and it just pumps up the volume on the podcast. If you want to get any more from me, BrentCassidy.com. It's with a TY, not a DY. And and check out my book too. It's on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, Nightmare Success. As I used to say when I was typing my emails back and forth to my family and friends, stay strong. I'll do the same. Nightmare Success in and out. Thank you, Father Joe. Oh, hey, wait. Is there a book there?
You just said a book. That's our book, Happily Ever
After.
Amazon. Happily Ever After. So
I will put that in the show notes too, Father Joe. I didn't know that.
Thank you. Awesome.
Awesome.
God love you all. Thank you.
Nightmare Success in and out.